questions, and everything you need to level up, to get these damn ducks in a row.
In my journey to get my life together and in my journey to get my damn ducks in a row, I think the most important goal that I have is the goal of being a better parent, right? Of course, most people want to make more money, all the things, you want to get rid of debt, you want to pay off stuff, you want to do something and be intentional. But one of the most important things that I can do is be a better parent. In no world am I a bad parent, and I have an excellent relationship with my son. However, transitioning into adulthood requires a different version of me than it did when I was teaching him how to read or do math or whatever the case may be. Especially when you talk about like infants, right? They're pretty much attached to you 24/7. So you don't really need a lot of skills other than keeping them alive for the first part of their life. Their needs are super simple: food, clean diaper, healthy, safe environment. That's pretty much it. So then as a kid gets older, they start exploring the environment. So obviously you still need a safe environment. Now you actually have to feed them, right? Because they're no longer either being breastfed or bottle fed, whatever the case may be. Exploring the world, right? Developing language and all the other things. It just requires you to essentially be patient. Obviously read a few parenting books. And it just requires you to kind of be there, because a child is going to develop to a certain degree on their own. Your job as a parent is literally just to guide their transition through the different phases of development and childhood, right? However, right, nowadays it's a little bit different, especially raising a young adult, because the things that a child needs now is totally different than what they would have needed. Even if we're comparing a teenager from today to a teenager back in 1990, a teenager back in year 2000, even a teenager in 2010, right? Honestly, even pre-COVID teenagers are different from teenagers today. The world that I grew up in no longer exists. So it requires me to be adaptable to a certain level in order to make sure that I'm giving my child the things that he needs in order to be the best version of himself that he can be. And as a parent, I can honestly say sometimes I don't always know what that is. I don't always have the answers. And, they say mother knows best, but that is literally not always the case. Does my child have another parent? Absolutely. Does my child have a network and a support system? Absolutely. And we all play our part to make sure that he gets the things that he needs and that he has the tools that he needs to be successful. However, there's a very real pivot that's taking place, and today's children are definitely different than yesterday's children. And not even like on some elder millennial hating on Gen Z type time. I'm saying the world literally looks different. Some things have gotten safer. Some things have gotten worse. Even when we come to the quality of like food and other stuff, what the career landscape looks like, the job market, the economy, right? So the old advice that my mom gave me, like, you go to school, you get a good job, save for a rainy day. That's literally not enough. People are working full-time jobs right now. Some people working multiple jobs and still can't make ends meet. We're in a situation where a brand new car once upon a time only cost $20,000, where now you spending upwards of $40,000 for a Volkswagen. You know what I'm saying? Not only that, dating looks different. I got a battle with red pill content. I'm so, thank goodness my son never, clung to that foolishness, right? He figured some things out on his own. However, though, one thing we know about problematic people is that they're consistently and constantly recruiting. And there are so many different things that are vying for the attention of your children. And fortunately for me as a parent, first of all, I'm lit. So I am fortunate enough to be someone that my son respects and somebody that he's actually proud of. So like nobody outside of my son's family has a greater influence on him than his actual family, right? My son actually cares what I have to say. He's going to listen to me before he listens to some weird old rapper or whatever the case may be. He appreciates me for who I am. He thinks I'm a wonderful person, and I've worked very hard to be somebody that he could be proud of. Therefore, I don't have to compete with outsiders for the attention and the respect and the influence of my son. Not only that, he respects his father, right? So he has another person who he's probably going to listen to before he listens to outsiders. And I say all that to say, though, those things are still competing for the attention of your children, and their peers are also competing for that attention. And even in today's political climate, you don't know how people are raising their children nowadays. And like you see so many horror stories, or just, people being less social post-COVID. and not necessarily knowing how to be social with each other, how to be appropriate in the workplace, how to deal with each other face to face, being able to like communicate with people outside of a screen, like even like I said with dating, right? Because apps and things like that. I literally have been on one of those dating apps like once in my life, and I was in my 30s, and I literally spent all of 2 days on a couple of the normal dating apps, and I was like, oh, this is overwhelming and it's way too much. I'd rather just meet somebody in person, and that's worked for me, right? However, the landscape is literally different, and I don't have all the answers on how to navigate that. So my goal is to obviously be more present, to be more intentional, but also, unfortunately, I have to be of the world a little bit more. I can't just hold myself up in my household, watch my comfort shows, do my things, be just me and my books in my office all the time, because my son has to go out and navigate the world that I've, spent a lot of time and money attempting to isolate myself from. So in order for me to be effective as I want to as a parent and still be able to make that transition and pivot from, raising a young child to essentially an adult now, right? And helping him solve problems that look a little different than the ones that same problem, but it comes in a different package nowadays. And for me to be better equipped for that, that means that I gotta get out there. I gotta get in the field to a degree, right? That means I have to do the things. I have to pay attention to what people his age are actually doing. I have to kind of be knowledgeable about the trends and other stuff, because I can't help him if I don't know what's going on. You can't teach your children something that you don't know. So the best thing you can do as a parent is to get as much information as possible to make them better equipped. I am not one of those parents who feels like I want to shelter my kid or keep him from doing things or knowing people that are different. My job is not to raise a mini me. My job is not to raise a miniature version of his father or whoever. My job is to give him the tools to be the best version of himself that he wants to be. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that's difficult because I like things a certain way. I was raised a certain way and all these other things, right? And so that doesn't mean that I have to, force certain things on my son. My thing is to remain open-minded, make sure I provide a safe space for him, but also be knowledgeable. That way, when he comes to me inevitably for advice, or for help, support, whatever the case may be, I can actually know what's going on. One of the most important things I've ever done with my life is be a mom. And I love being a mom, right? I absolutely love being a mom. And I know it's not necessarily the most popular thing to say right now, because being a mom is hard and it's work. And I definitely understand that it's not all rainbows and unicorns. However, it's something that I do love. And it's very, very important to me that I do a good job, because I take anything I do seriously. And so for me, to ensure that I have a healthy and long-lasting relationship with my son, it's going to require me to be open-minded, and it's probably going to require me to change in certain ways. And I'm okay with that. But that's going to require some work from me, which is why it's a goal. It's not something I can just do overnight. And he's going to get older every day. You know what I'm saying? And so I still have to be able to be a source of information, support, and safety for him well until his adulthood, until I'm gone. Essentially, I have to be those things for him. And so for me, it's important that I put a little bit more focus on that, so that I can facilitate and do what I need to do in order to create that environment, so I can have the relationship and keep and maintain the relationship that I would like to have with my son. And my goal every New Year's is pretty much the same, is to be an asset to the people around me. And that also includes my family, right? AKA my son. So therefore, that's why being a better parent is important to me, because I can help basically guide this human being into being the best version of himself that he can be. I can really be an asset to him. And it's important to me that I actually take this seriously, as I've always done, but take this seriously and understanding that parenting is not done once they become 18. You know what I'm saying? And so I want to continue to be a parent that he can be proud of. So